Hello everyone and welcome back for some more Drag Race gossip, secrets and drama. So I'm back for the final Have Your Say video for All Stars 9 and today we're going to be talking about episode 12 which was the finale. So today we're going to be recapping the episode, going through the results of the Have Your Say poll, and I'll be talking about a little bit of recent drama to do with Roxxxy Andrews calling out Drag Race fans, as well as Nicky Doll threatening to sue Laurence Fox. All that and more coming up in today's video, so let's get started. Okay, so this episode, as we know, is part 2 of the finale, so not a huge amount happens at the beginning, and last week the only real thing that happened was the fact that they had to vote for the double diamond, which was the queen who gets their amount of badges doubled. And we saw a couple of the votes, but this is actually the episode where most of the important stuff happens. So the queens are in the workroom for the last time and they're doing their makeup and it's very emotional. And then Kylie Sonique Love comes in, who of course was the winner of All Stars 6. And usually the last winner comes in to see the queens, so that normally would be Jimbo. But we see that Jimbo is away during a show, so she does a kind of video call instead. And this was kind of interesting because usually the queens have some kind of contractual obligation that they have to come back for the finale to do the handover. So I was kind of surprised that they let Jimbo do this, but I guess it must have been already organised with the contract. But it was really nice to see Kylie again because she's one of my favourite winners, so I did really enjoy her interaction and also seeing her huge glow up since her original season, All Star 6, and now she looks even more amazing. So let's go through the Queen's talent show numbers and then we'll go through the actual results of who won the season. Okay, so first up we had Angeria, who did a kind of original song number. Now, there are quite a lot of original songs in this, so I will just say overall, I personally find original songs can be good. I think that maybe they're a little bit overdone at this point, so I like it when queens do something a little bit different. But with Angeria specifically, I thought Angeria actually did a really good number. I thought that the idea of having the pit crew dancers with the fans was a really nice idea because it gave it a different feel to some of the other people. I also felt that Angeria just really embodied the song, and the song was actually probably one of the better songs that we saw this episode. So I really liked Angeria's performance. It was very clean and very well done. Next we had Gottmik, who did more kind of a rock number, and she also played some guitar. I liked this performance, and I did think it was interesting to see this side of Gottmik in kind of a more rock and roll type way, because we don't necessarily see that much of Gottmik doing this. And I thought it was nice that she did the guitar because it shows off a skill that she has. The only slight issue, and I'm not sure if it's just me, let me know in the comments, maybe it's just me in my old age, but I personally found that the music was so loud I couldn't really hear the actual words of the song, which to me kind of took away from it a little bit. But let me know if it was just me, or maybe I need to turn the volume up more when I'm listening to it. But it was a fine performance, but potentially not my favourite because of the sound issue. Next we had Georges, and she also lip-synced to a track, although it wasn't her singing. But I thought it was a good track, and it was more a kind of dance number, I suppose. And I actually thought it was very good. It was quite interesting to see her in her element doing this kind of dancing. But the bit at the end that really blew me away was the part where the dancer kind of tossed her over his shoulder and she slid across the stage. That was so cool. And the way it just looked so effortless and she stopped right before she fell off the stage, that was just so amazing. So for that alone, I really loved this performance from Georges. Next we had Plastique. She also did a kind of original song, but also showing a lot of her culture. The bit where they pulled out the sleeves was definitely the highlight for me. I really loved that. Showing off her culture was really interesting, but I thought this whole idea with the long sleeves was just so beautiful and it looked so dramatic on stage. I also liked that we saw not just glamorous Plastique, but we also saw more of a kind of funny side to her when she had those pyrotechnic things coming out of her breasts, and then she got a marshmallow out at the end and started roasting it. I really liked that because it added a certain comedic element to it, but it also just looked really cool on stage. So this was definitely a standout performance. Next we had Nina West, who also did an original song. I thought this was fine, and I thought that Nina showed off her singing skills very well, and the song had a really nice message about inclusivity and things like that. However, it wasn't my favourite song. I don't think it was particularly original. We've heard some things like that before, but she performed it well. But to me, it just wasn't really a standout because it would just felt a little bit generic. But her voice did sound very good. Then we had Roxxxy Andrews, who did a kind of burlesque number. I liked that this tied into the fact that she did burlesque for her talent on All Stars 2 as well, and I guess this was a slightly more elevated version. The only thing I noticed, and let me know if you also noticed this, but the audio for her song sounded quite echoey and almost like it wasn't quite finished, like it was the rough version. I don't know, maybe there's some story that this was done a little bit last minute, but compared to all of the other tracks, this one just sounded really quiet and muffled, almost like it was recorded not in a studio. So I'd be interested to know if there's any kind of information about that, because it did, unfortunately for me, take slightly away from the performance. But overall, Roxxxy did an incredible job. Her body looked amazing. She's very talented. The outfit was also great. So it was a fun performance, but for me, the audio slightly let it down. Then we had Chanel, who did a sort of juggling number with also some knife juggling at the end. I really loved this performance because it was just so Vegas and showgirl, but in a very different way. And it wasn't just another original song. I liked that she did something completely different. And juggling at the beginning is hard enough, but the fact that she then did it with real knives, I was on the edge of my seat because it's just so crazy to do that sort of thing live. And the bit at the end when she put that massive cube thing on her mouth was also really cool. And it does show a real skill that a lot of queens wouldn't have, so I really appreciated this. So for me, Chanel was definitely a standout. And then finally we have Vanjie, who also did a original song. I liked the song and I thought Vanjie looked amazing as she always does, and she's a great dancer. The only thing I would say, it was another original song and it was kind of what we would expect from Vanjie, but I did love that it had a certain humour to it, and she talked about bodysuits and the fact that Michelle has commented on that before, and she looked amazing. But to me, it was just a good song, but perhaps what I had already expected. Okay, so now we're going to go through the runway outfits for this week, and I'll just quickly go through them, and then at the end I will say which one was my favourite. So the first queen was Angeria Paris Van Michaels. Then we had Gottmik. Next was Gorgeous. After that was Plastique Tiara. Then we had Nina West. After that was Roxxxy Andrews. Next up we had Chanel. And then finally we had Vanessa Vanjie. I thought all of the queens looked amazing this week. I don't think there was a bad outfit at all. I thought there were a few standouts for me. Angeria's outfit was just so elaborate and larger than life, and I just loved the colours and it just looked so elegant. Plastique's was also incredible just because of the amount of detail that was on it, and it was just so intricate, so cool, something we've not really seen before. So that was definitely a standout. For me, the one I was most surprised at, because I maybe didn't quite expect it, was Chanel. Just because we've never seen her in this kind of number before. But I really loved it, and this was potentially my favourite. I loved that she had that dog that she was wheeling along with her. It was just so funny, but it also just looked so elegant and kind of 1920s flappers. It just looked so elegant and so chic. So I think this was my favourite just because I really loved the presentation of it, and it was something that I wasn't expecting. Okay, so after the judges' critiques, we find out that the queen that won the double diamond is Nina. However, unfortunately, this only brings her total to 4, which means that she has not got enough to get into the finale. We also find out that the top 2 queens for this week were Vanessa Vanjie and Angeria. And then when taking all of the badges into account, the final 3 are Angeria, Vanjie and Roxxxy Andrews. The 3 top queens all do a lip sync performance individually to the song Rhythm Nation by Janet Jackson. And the winner of the lip sync, and therefore the winner of the season, is announced as Angeria Paris Van Michaels. So please say a big congratulations to Angeria to be the winner of All Stars 9. Okay, so let's go through the results of the Have Your Say poll. So question 1 was, whose talent show number was the best? And with the most amount of votes, which was 27.2%, was Plastique Tiara. This was followed by Chanel with 26.1%, and then Gorgeous with 21.4%. Personally, I would have put Chanel number 1, I think, just because I thought it was just something so different and I really loved the juggling and the knives and everything else. I did really like Plastique's number. It was very interesting and cool, and I liked that she had quite a few different elements in it, such as the sleeves and also the sparkly boobs. That was really, really cool, and it had a lot of humour to it as well, which I wasn't quite expecting. I also loved George's as well, just because that bit at the end when the dancer threw her across the stage just looked so cool. So I can see why these 3 were in the top for that, but I probably would have also put Angeria quite high as well. Question 2 was, whose runway look was the best? And in first place we had Plastique Tiara with 52.1, then it was Angeria with 15.7, and then it was Gottmik with 9.8, although Roxxxy was only 1 point below with 9.7. And I do agree, Plastique looked incredible as she always does. It was such a cool outfit, and it did look something so intricate and just had so many details. It was almost like cosplay. It was so good, and I really loved that she was incorporating her culture but also doing something so different. And I also agree that I thought Angeria looked amazing. I loved that outfit as well. It was just so big and flashy, but also I just loved the colour combination as well. But it was quite difficult this week because all of them just looked so good. Gottmik and Roxxxy also looked good as always. So for me, it was quite difficult to decide which one I thought was the best. But I probably would have put Chanel slightly higher, as I said, because I just really loved the concept of her look. Question 3 was, who did you think was going to get the double diamond to double their badges? And with 43.9% was Nina West, followed by Roxxxy with 33.6%. And I definitely agree, because we did see in the preview from last week that Nina and Roxxxy did both get at least 2 votes. And as we saw, Nina did get the most. And I guess it kind of makes sense because a lot of people didn't want to give it to Roxxxy because she already had the most. And maybe people felt like Nina deserved more than she got. Question 4 was, did you agree with the top 2 of this week? And we had 84.9% for no and 15.1% for yes. So this was obviously a pretty strong result for no. They did not agree with the top 2. And looking at the results, it looks like people then feel like Plastique should have been in the top, or maybe George's. And I can see that I do think theirs was very interesting. I personally would have put Angeria maybe in the top, but also maybe someone like either George's or Plastique because they were just so good. Although I liked Vanessa's, I did think it was maybe slightly more on the generic side, although it was funny and she did a very good job. So she probably would have been the person I wouldn't have put in the top 2, but still, it was a very tight competition. Question 5 was, who did the best lip sync out of the final 3? And we had Roxxxy Andrews in first place with 50.5%, then Vanessa with 31.6%, and Angeria with 17.8%. I thought this was quite interesting because I actually thought that Vanessa did the best actual lip sync, regardless of whether I think she should have been in the top 3. I actually thought she slayed the lip sync more than the other 2. Roxxxy, I also thought did a very good job. I really like Angeria, but I don't think in this particular lip sync she was the strongest. But it does come down to whether the final lip sync really does matter in terms of, is it who does the best, that who's going to win the season, or does it come down to more track record and who RuPaul thinks has done the best throughout the season regardless of this lip sync? Question 6 was, were you surprised at who won the season? And this was quite a strong result. We had 82.6% for yes and only 17.4% for no. So most people were surprised at who won. And I do agree, I did think that Roxxxy was going to win just because of the edit that we saw. However, I do want to just point out that I have seen quite a lot of people discrediting Angeria, saying she shouldn't have won. And that I do not agree with because I think that's quite rude and mean. But I also think that Angeria did an amazing job and she's an incredible queen. And at the end of the day, it's not her decision if she wins, it's RuPaul's decision, so you shouldn't blame the queens. And I do think that it's unfortunate because I don't think that's very nice to Angeria for people to be telling her she shouldn't have won. Because I do think that, although I was surprised, I do think Angeria deserved it. Question 7 was then, who did you think was going to win the season? And perhaps unsurprisingly, we had 77.7% for Roxxxy and then 12.9% for Plastique, with Angeria getting only 7.5%. As I said, I did also think that Roxxxy was going to win just from the edit that we saw. I thought she was given a kind of winner's edit because she had this storyline of coming back to Drag Race several times. She also had the most amount of badges, although we do have to remember that she had the same number of wins as Angeria, I believe. They both had 4 wins, but Roxxxy got gifted an extra badge, so she had 5. So I do think that I was kind of surprised. I did think that Roxxxy had it in the bag. But as I said, Angeria also did amazing, so I can see why she won ultimately. But I was also surprised. I did think potentially Plastique would get into the top 3, so that was also partly a surprise to me. And then finally, question 8 was, did you enjoy All Stars 9 overall? And we had 69.7% for yes and 30.3% for no. So it was almost a 70-30% split for yes. So although most people did enjoy it, still almost a third of people said no, they did not enjoy it. I did enjoy the season because I thought it was a great showcase of talent, and I liked the fact that we had no eliminations for this particular season because it meant that all of the queens got to show all of their incredible outfits because they also had the stipend of money, so they were able to have these amazingly elaborate outfits. However, I think the reason maybe 30% of people said no, they did not enjoy it, maybe was because it did feel a little bit kumbaya because there were no eliminations, no negative critiques. To me, that did take some of the stakes away from the season, which is a shame. But ultimately, it was still a fun season and I enjoyed it. But I don't think this would be my choice for a format for every single All-Stars. But let me know in the comments what you think. Do you want a charity season for the rest of All-Stars, or do you think that it should just be a one-off for this particular season? Okay, so let's move on to the comments for this week. And there were a lot of comments to go through, so I've just picked out some of the ones that I want to talk about briefly. So, in terms of my Patreon comments, my Patreon Linda said that she found it funny that so many people felt that Roxxxy was the front runner, but she felt that Angie was the front runner, and she hated to see the season end and liked the friendship that was being shown. My Patreon Melanie said, I was absolutely shocked Roxxxy didn't win. With all her wins over the season and growth since we first saw her on season 5, I felt she was robbed. And this was quite a common theme in the comments. For example, my Patreon Sue said, I was sad that Roxxxy didn't win. She said it was her last chance for a crown and Angeria will have more chances at getting one. And similarly, my Patreon Ashley said, congratulations to the winner, but I thought Roxxxy was going to win. And this was quite a common theme. For example, in the comments on the Have Your Say poll, quite a few people also said that they felt like Roxxxy should have won. And for example, some people said, this was rigged. Angeria should not have won this season. She had no storyline and wasn't the best, not even in the final lackluster lip sync. And I do agree that I think the final lip sync was a bit odd and it was a bit lackluster the way that they showed it. But as I said earlier, I do not agree with the fact that Angeria shouldn't have won, in the sense that even if you like Roxxxy and thought she deserved to win, I don't think you should say that at the expense of the person who did win, which is Angeria, because Angeria is a sickening queen and definitely deserved it. But also, just to address this whole thing of rigging, this was something that was quite a common theme. Quite a few people mentioned this whole thing of saying that they thought the season was rigged. But unfortunately, I think you have to think about it from the sense of quite a few people said that they thought the season was rigged for Roxxxy, and then when Angeria won, people said that it was rigged for Angeria. So it's almost like people can't really decide which they're rigged for. Is it Angeria or is it Roxxxy? And I think that people would have said it was rigged either way. My Patreon member Shara said, I feel like the final lip sync was pointless because Vanjie definitely did the best with the lip sync. And I do agree with this part. As I said, I think Vanjie did do the best in the lip sync, although I don't think she deserved to win the whole show, so I can see why she didn't. But it does make it a bit odd, I think, when the person who did win didn't necessarily do the best in the lip sync. So I thought it was just a weird way to end the show, and it did feel slightly anticlimactic. But my Patreon Sabato said, congratulations Angeria, I felt that she is the most deserving. And I really do love Angeria, and I agree with this comment that I think she deserves everything she gets because she is an incredible queen, and I've loved her ever since season 14. So I hope that her win doesn't get overshadowed with people saying that she didn't deserve it because Roxxxy did. My Patreon Emmy said, I really dislike these last minute it's still anyone's game twists that make a lot of what happened in the season not really matter, same with All Stars 7. And this part I definitely will agree with. For example, the double diamond thing did feel a little bit pointless because in this particular instance, Nina won and it didn't really make a difference because she still, even with the doubled amount of badges, didn't have enough to get into the finale. But if it had been someone else and they got into the finale instead, it would have felt a little bit unfair because it does kind of discount everything that the queens have done. So, although it does add some stakes because you think, oh, who's going to get it? Are they going to get into the finale? Ultimately, I think the whole twists this season with the ruby snippers and then the double diamond did just feel a little bit pointless. Someone in the comments on the Have Your Say poll said, this finale was by far one of the most confusing finales ever. The twist made no sense because it didn't really help Nina get into the finale. They shouldn't have added the double diamond twist. And that's quite similar to what I just said. I do think these twists don't really make a huge amount of sense, so I think they need to probably rethink that for future seasons. But on the other hand, we did also have some people who did say that they think Angeria definitely deserved the win and they love her. And I do agree, I think we do have to celebrate Angeria, and you can lift up other queens without pulling down other queens. So I think we do have to remember that it is just a TV show for entertainment, and we shouldn't be saying that queens don't deserve something just because our favourite didn't win. But let me know in the comments what you think. Do you like the twists on All Stars, or do you think it should have not had any twists and it should have just been the number of badges that the queens had up until the finale? Okay, so we're now going to talk about a little bit of recent tea to do with Roxxxy Andrews calling out Drag Race fans. So, Roxxxy recently appeared in a YouTube video with Patrick Starr, who is a makeup artist and social media influencer. And they were talking about Roxxxy's career in drag as well as her time on All Stars 9 as well as Drag Race in general. At one point, during the interview, Roxxxy said that after season 5, she got a lot of, quote, "schlack" because of how the season turned out, which is presumably meaning that Roxxxy felt like she didn't come across well on that season, and a lot of people accused her of bullying Jinx Monsoon. Even though Roxxxy has since said that that is not actually what happened and that she and Jinx are friends. And Jinx herself has even said in the past that she didn't feel bullied by anyone, and on season 5, Jinx said that she did actually clap back at Roxxxy and the others quite a lot, but they cut that out of the final edit, which made it look more one-sided. But actually, Jinx said that she did stand up for herself a lot more than what was shown. But back to the Patrick Starr interview, and Patrick asked Roxxxy if the fan reaction to Roxxxy on season 5 changed her. Roxxxy said no, it never changed her, but she had to spend 2 to 3 years touring the world to, quote, prove to people that I wasn't that girl that they thought I was. She also said that it was, quote, hard work and she wanted to prove it through actions rather than words. Patrick then asked Roxxxy, how should the fans appropriately judge a queen on and off the show, and should they not believe everything they see on the show? Roxxxy said everyone can have their own opinion and say they don't like someone's outfit, but don't judge them as a person until you know them. Roxxxy finished by saying that at the end of the day, the queens are just trying to entertain you and give good television, but she added, quote, do you know how juicy Drag Race would be if the fans would just stay off Twitter reading everybody and actually let people be who they are? It would be a whole different game. If they want some good TV, lay off the queens, stop being trolls, just be nicer. And this topic has come up a lot in recent years on how social media has negatively affected Drag Race, and that the queens are now more careful about what they say and are more afraid to have drama on the show because they might get backlash on social media. So as I always say in my videos, make sure you never send hate to any of the queens and just enjoy the show passively, and remember that it's just a TV show. But let me know in the comments what you think about this. Do you think that social media has ruined Drag Race? And finally, I also want to talk about some recent drama that is unrelated to All Stars 9, which involves Nicky Doll threatening to sue Laurence Fox. As some of you will know, and I have talked about this on my channel in the past, Laurence Fox is a British former actor who is now a right-wing political commentator. Laurence has attracted a lot of controversy over the years due to his extreme views on things such as vaccinations, immigration, LGBT+ issues, as well as many other things. And for example, Laurence has previously publicly burnt the pride flag and said that it was the quote child mutilation flag. And at one point he even compared the Progress pride flag to the Nazi flag. Back in October 2020, Laurence got into an argument on Twitter with several people, including Crystal from Drag Race UK Season 1. And Crystal and a few others had criticised some of Laurence's previous tweets, saying they were racist. And in response, Laurence called Crystal and the others P-words. I can't say the actual word on YouTube, but the word I'm referring to is a word that begins with P that's used to describe adults who have sexual attraction to children, and the word ends in the word file. Crystal, as well as a few other people, later sued Laurence and said that it was defamation to call them P-words. And they said that that word has historically been used against LGBT+ people to marginalise and attack them. Laurence countersued them for calling him racist, but his case was unsuccessful. And then in April 2024, Laurence was found guilty of libel and was ordered to pay the equivalent of $220,000 to Crystal and the other defendant. The judge on the case said that Laurence calling them P-words was, quote, a gross, groundless and indefensible libel with distressing and harmful real-world consequences for them. And this was a big victory for Crystal, who posted about this a lot on social media and also appeared on several news shows to talk about this. However, it looks like Laurence has now said something similar about another drag queen, this time Nicky Doll. As you know, Nicky Doll competed on season 12 of Drag Race US and is also the host of Drag Race France. Nicky recently appeared in the Paris Olympic Games opening ceremony, as well as several other drag artists. After this aired, Laurence tweeted a clip of Nicky with the other drag performers and said, "No point in getting wound up when the child effers want to wind you up. Just laugh at the deviant little P-words. Eternity is a B." After Laurence tweeted this, Nicky commented on the tweet saying, "Lawyer on the line, see you in court." And at first people weren't sure if Nicky was being serious or not. And then a while later, Nicky retweeted Laurence's tweet and said, "Since you didn't learn the first time around when you called my friend @Crystal a P-word, I'm going to show you that you don't get to write things like that about queer people for the fun and the misinformation of it and go away with it. See you in court again @Laurence Fox." And so it looks like Nicky is serious about taking legal action against Laurence. However, as of yet, there hasn't been any more information about this. So we'll have to wait and see if there are any further developments about this and whether Nicky does actually take legal action against Laurence. So there you go, there was the final Have Your Say video for All Stars 9. What did you think of All Stars 9 overall? And do you want all future All-Stars seasons to also be charity seasons? Let me know in the comments. And if you'd like to get early access to my videos as well as have your comments featured in my Have Your Say videos, please check out my Patreon and consider supporting me. It goes such a long way to helping support my channel and I really appreciate it. And I'll put a link to my Patreon in the description. I'd also like to say a massive thank you to all of my Patreon members who are amazing and support me every month. Thank you so much for being part of my Patreon. I really appreciate it and I really do love my Patreon community. You are all legends. If you liked this video, please remember to like and comment on the video to help tell the algorithm that this is a great video. And make sure you hit the subscribe button because it really does make such a big difference to my channel. Thank you for watching and I hope you'll join me again in future videos. Thank you, bye!